Alright, so I think we're all done. Oh, this is different, apparently. Or I never looked at it after the first time I did this.
I won't deny. It's fun to have danced like that.
Aww. Cute. Alright. I think we're all done, guys. So, let me just double check my inventory to make sure there isn't anything I haven't used yet. I think we're good. So it's time to insert some things. 1, 2. And one more door to go. A diamond. And a heart. I'm pretty positive. Let's get going.
Beryl, I got the door opened. Beryl? No response. Okay, I guess I'll be playing the waiting game again. I know it probably hardly matters at this point, but we've come this far together. It would feel weird to run ahead without her now. Actually, maybe I'll go ahead and rest my eyes for a bit too. Not in here, though. The club's seating always was a bit cheap and uncomfortable, and it looks like Beryl did her best to keep things authentic in that regard. You're coming with me, Sleeping Beauty.
Alright. So cute.
Why, hello there. A change of scenery, I see. Am I about to find out I've been cuffed to the sofa again?
Would you like that?
Can't say it wouldn't be an interesting turn of events.
Sorry to disappoint, then.
I hope I wasn't out for too long. What have you been thinking about in the meantime?
Nothing too good. How about you?
Remember how you asked me about how many people I'd slept with in here?
I guess I was pretty blatant about that. Sorry. It's none of my business.
It's alright. The answer depends, though. Are we counting every encounter where some clothes came off? Or only the people who seem to actually care?
I'm starting to get the weird inkling that I know where you're going with this.
Let's just say that the last time someone simply held me and took care of me was...
It's not days she's counting, is it? Are you trying to hint at something here?
I quite like you. And I'm not about to say I don't like the idea.
Oh boy. I'm actually both flattered to hear that, and a little torn at the same time.
I believe you're not completely unfamiliar with what I'm talking about either.
But it's been only a few months for me compared to however long you've been stuck the way you are. I have a hard time even imagining just how fucked your whole situation is. And to be honest, I feel like I'd be taking advantage of you.
Well, as far as I'm concerned, I'm the one taking advantage of you right now. Besides, I thought you didn't have that many qualms about engaging in one-night stands.
That's different.
Different?
It's one thing when you go somewhere expecting to get laid, and where all parties involved are aware of the rules they are playing under, where we all know we're just looking for a quick thrill. But here, everything's unexpected. I can't settle into a familiar routine. And I think I can say that right now I don't know if I can do something that feels cheap and meaningless. So this is something completely different.
Why would it be cheap and meaningless, though? That sounded pretty heartfelt.
Because, like you said before, when I leave here, I'll probably forget you. Fuck 'em and forget 'em is about as cheap as it comes. I'm not sure I could just sleep with you like that.
Who would have thought you could show so much compassion for someone you've barely met? But that's the problem, isn't it? When we've talked a bit, it's not as easy anymore when there's some kind of emotional connection involved. Would it be easier if I was some random stranger you just met at a bar?
I think you know the answer to that already. What does that say about me, huh?
Probably something along the lines of, you're a bit broken. But guess what? We're both broken people in our own ways.
Yeah, a very comforting thought, that. And something we should totally bond over. I mean, sure, you're attractive. And physically, it's definitely an appealing idea. But mentally, I worry that my sense of guilt would be butt-fucking me with a sandstone strap-on.
Only up until you leave this place, though.
Besides, wouldn't that memory hurt you just as harshly? Since you'd remember and know that I might just forget you. Here, have a lovely taste of the joy and happiness that you'll never have again. Is that what you want?
I don't want you to forget me, no. But I don't want to shy away from something just because it might hurt me. I know there are things I've forgotten from my own past, but I also know I remember everything that's been said and done here. With all the lost souls who've been here with me. In the real world, with so little interaction, it's all too easy to end up feeling numb. And even if it does bring me some pain, I would like a good memory to hold on to. Maybe having that hurt will give me focus. If you were in my situation, wouldn't you want the same? So even if it's only this one time, even if just for a few moments, I'd like to feel wanted. So, Chris, would you?
She's actually asking me to sleep with her.
Alright, we're going in, boys and girls. Hold on to your hats.
I've made a lot worse decisions than this. So to hell with it. You're absolutely sure you want this?
Yes.
One question, then. Do we have to worry about protection here?
Chris, remember how I said this was more than a dream but less than real? You don't have to worry about much of anything in here.
Fair enough. Don't blame me for double-checking, though. It's always better to be safe than sorry about these things. And addressing it beforehand doesn't ruin the mood later on.
Clearly you're the expert, so I'll take your word for it.
I have to admit, though, that's a nice fantasy you're selling. Alright, Beryl. You're on. Show me how much you want this.
Oh?
Don't tell me you're suddenly going to be playing the shy card.
Well... It's just that... I've never done it like this before.
And by this you mean...
With me taking the first step.
You were being so flirty just a little while ago. What happened to the eager little girl? Are you actually all bark and no bite, Beryl?
Things are actually a lot easier when you're just watching.
You and your socking. Okay, let's start like that then.
Huh?
I don't mind you watching me if that's what gets you into the mood.
Ah! No, wait! Let me.
Oh boy. Here we go. We're in the patch now, babies. Blue heart. Now, I don't... Is this still from Chris's point of view, or is this from the narrator's point of view? The narrator being me. I guess we'll find out. Beryl steals herself. She's not new to this, but that doesn't make her any less nervous. This encounter is one she particularly wants to go well. A moment passes before she reaches for Chris's belt buckle, her fingers finding the smooth metal and rough leather. Okay, narrator. In that case, water for the narrator before she gets all hot and bothered. Alright, I can do this. It undoes easily enough. It's a simple buckle after all. The button at the top of his jeans presents her with no trouble either. She captures the tag on his zipper slider between her fingers, and after a moment to gather her courage, she slowly drags it downwards. Pulling the top of his jeans open, she reveals his briefs, which are, of course, black. Looking at the rest of his outfit, they were bound to be either that, or dark red, weren't they? Didn't she give him those briefs, though? She could have made it whatever color she wanted. The form-fitting fabric leaves no doubt that Chris is somewhat aroused, because of her no less, and she can't help but feel flattered by the realization. She slips her hands just underneath his shirt, feeling the skin of his stomach. She enjoys the contact, and not just because her hands are cold and his skin feels warm. Chris doesn't seem to mind, so she lets herself indulge for a moment more by tracing her fingers along some of his muscles.
You're not ticklish, are you?
Who knows?
It's clear he's teasing, and Beryl can't help but grin. Her fingers continue sliding down until her nails hook under his brief's waistband. Beryl takes a breath. Somewhat of an affectation, given what little need a dead girl in an imagined world has for oxygen. And pulls the fabric gently downwards, gradually revealing the length of Chris's erection.
It looks a lot bigger when it's up close. Not quite what you were claiming on the blackboard, mind you, but...
Oh dang, that blackboard choice was important to this. I can't believe. That earns her a soft chuckle.
You sure know how to flatter a guy. Although...
She looks up at him and he winks down at her.
Touch and see.
Well, she can definitely do that. Beryl's hands wander back to Chris's lap. Taking the encouragement to heart, she slides a fingertip along the underside and... Oh. She immediately realizes two things. One, that obviously feels good, judging by the way his breath just caught. And two, he clearly wasn't fully erect before. Oh no.
You wanted to watch me a little first, didn't you?
That actually hadn't been the reason for her pause. She'd just been contemplating how best to approach this. Since he's offering, though, she's not going to tell him no. Beryl's had far too long to herself to discover just how much she actually enjoys watching others, and the thought of Chris deliberately putting on a show for her is intoxicating.
I think I'd like that.
Chris shoves his jeans down a bit further, bunching the fabric up around his thighs. Clearly he's not shy of being seen. Not that he has any reason to be, as far as Beryl's concerned. He starts by tracing his fingers up and down himself, much like the way she'd stroked, before wrapping his hand around the shaft and continuing with the motions. Beryl glances up at Chris's face, only to find him watching her intently. She wonders whether that means he's currently thinking about her rather than some other fantasy. Looking back down, she continues to watch what he's doing. The thought is nicely distracting, actually, as she realizes that she's dropped one hand to her lap and is absent-mindedly wandering her fingers over the fabric there, too.
Is it okay if I touch you?
Be my guest.
Chris withdraws his hand, resting his arms across the back of the sofa, and Beryl is eager to get back to what she started. She lightly runs her fingernails from base to tip, fascinated by the way he twitches under her touch. He hadn't done that when his own fingers were at work. Feeling bolder, Beryl wraps her hand around him and begins to stroke. She tries her best to emulate the motions she observed Chris making. She doesn't need to ask him whether that feels good. The way his breathing changes is enough of a hint.
You can hold a little more firmly if you like. It's not fragile.
I see.
Beryl tightens her grasp a little and is rewarded with a soft moan. It's definitely an exciting feeling to know how much her touch means to him right now, and so she can't help but wonder. Looking up at him again, she bites her lip. Oh boy, girl's bold.
Would you mind if I used my mouth, too?
She can feel a light shiver pass over Chris's body, and she wonders whether that was a reaction just from the suggestion. Yeah, I'm like, I think he'll be fine with that.
I have absolutely no fucking objections.
That's all she needs to hear. Beryl slides off the sofa onto the floor, settling her knees by his feet. Her hands teasingly wander around Chris's clothed thighs for a brief moment before finding their way back to his lap, and she leans closer. Experimentally, she slides her tongue along the tip. While the taste is a bit weird, it's not unpleasant, and certainly not something that will discourage her in her endeavors. Honestly, she's thrilled to have the opportunity. How Chris feels is important to her, unlike past encounters where she simply pinned hopes on physical intimacy, helping to forge a memory that would persist after her partner returned to the real world. Interesting. Looking up at Chris's face, she gives him another lick, a bolder one this time, eliciting a ragged intake of breath. There's absolutely no doubt in her mind. She has his complete, total, and undivided attention. And she's making him feel good. She presses a brief kiss against him and then opens her lips, carefully taking him within her mouth. Beryl feels his hips buck a little underneath her and wonders if that's a sign that he wants more. Bobbing her head down, then up again, she decides that two can play at that game. She's faintly aware of his hands gripping the sofa, but that's not really where her attention is focused. It's far more fascinating to hear the little sounds he makes as she takes him in, letting him thrust a little deeper each time. Beryl has a half-amused thought that the feeling of empowerment you get from making someone else feel good really is quite amazing. It's quite a turn-on for her, too. Is it greedy to want more? Chris doesn't seem to be complaining. Watching his expression, Beryl presses forward. She takes him deep, and a single thrust makes him slip into her throat. When she sees his eyes go wide, she can't help but feel slightly proud of herself. I guess ghosts have good gag reflexes. Who knew? Beryl has seen enough pairs in her lifetime death time to have an idea that this is usually something tricky to perform. But although it's a slightly uncomfortable sensation, it's definitely manageable, especially when she gets to observe Chris react like that. One of her hands sneaks down to her own lap again. It's something of a habit that's formed over the years. She's had little reason to worry about modesty or being caught yielding to temptation when nobody can see her. This time, though, she catches herself. She'd rather focus on Chris right now. She doesn't want to allow herself to be distracted. Beryl keeps him deep, just slightly moving to and fro, and feels him rocking his hips underneath her. Chris's breathing is coming in short gasps now, and she can see a questioning look forming on his face. She's not going to stop to speak, because hearing how turned on he is something she doesn't want to interrupt. Oh boy. Nehru and Zolf, what have you done to me? Oh no, oh boy. I'm trying to read. I'm like trying to read this so clinically, and it's not working. Not when you come to like a line like this. Oh no. Well. She gives him a small nod of encouragement instead. It's not a problem if he wants to continue like this. Any gag reflex she had in life is apparently long forgotten by her body. I was wondering. The thrusts gradually get harder, up to the point it's easier for her to focus more on keeping herself in place rather than moving. Beryl, absent-mindedly, feels tears forming in her eyes from the intensity of it all, and then she also feels a hand pressing around the back of her head. The questioning look is there on Chris's face as he slows down again, and wondering whether he needs more reassurance, Beryl looks him in the eyes and gives another small nod. The gesture is clearly a tipping point for Chris. The unexpected intensity of the encounter, coupled with her clear enthusiasm, is more than his self-control seems to care to deal with, and he holds her head in place as he thrusts harder and faster in what can no longer be described in remotely delicate terms. Look, this is all you have to know. He's quite simply fucking her throat, and to Beryl's surprise, she finds that the fact she's made him lose control like that is intensely satisfying. Oh my god. Oh my god. If this doesn't get demonetized, I'm gonna be so shocked. Yee! Phew!
Fuck.
She's watched him, she's heard him before, but even so, the intensity in his voice is unmistakable, as is his breathing. He's close.
Fuck.
She feels him pulse and throb and hears a strangled groan as he starts to come down her throat. Beryl patiently stays in place for a moment, letting him ease out from his climax. She rarely gets a taste of him as she finally withdraws, which isn't something she's too sad about, all things considered. It's not a taste she can remember hearing about in particularly positive terms, and she's pretty sure that smoking and drinking don't help much either. That's fair. She's also aware from having watched him and other men that too much sensation at this point in time is not a universally popular thing. Keeping that in mind, Beryl sits back a little, watching the results of her efforts. Or rather, their efforts. Chris did get rather enthusiastic towards the end, after all. She watches him collapse back against the sofa, his chest heaving with shaky breaths.
Was that okay?
Beryl tucks a strand of loose hair that got into her face back behind her ear.
I know it didn't last too long, and I haven't actually done all that before, and I got a bit carried away. I think I forgot to breathe, actually.
Chris weakly waves a hand at her. He's clearly in no state to talk properly at the moment. It's both sort of amusing and cute seeing him like this, Beryl thinks.
Beryl, you just officially ruined blowjobs for me.
Her face drops in a sudden moment of horror. Was that too much, or did she miss something and get something wrong?
I'm sorry? I thought... Should I...
Shit, that's not what I meant. Fuck. I mean... Normal people need to breathe, Beryl. They can't do what you just did. That deep for that long. Anyone else would have choked or something. People need air. The only thing I'm currently bummed about is that I'm probably never going to have an experience as intense as that ever again. especially with how unexpected that was. It's just all going to be a little downhill from here.
Oh!
Beryl's feeling a panic melts away and gets replaced with a sense of happiness instead. She can't help but grin. Poor Beryl.
Maybe it's for the best that you might forget me then.
You're impossible.
Chris beckons her to sit next to him on the sofa again, and so Beryl does, eager to snuggle against his side. His heart's still racing. That's fun, she decides. She caused that, and she enjoys the idea that she made him feel so good. He wraps his arm around her shoulders and brings his other hand up to stroke her cheek. She definitely enjoys that too.
Once I get my breath back, I think I'd like to do something for you, if you're okay with it.
Leaning her face into his hand, she closes her eyes, making a small noise of assent.
I think I might like that.
Okay. Alright. Okay, that was that part of the patch. Whew. Alright. That was a spicy meatball.
Wait, did you just say it was the first time you had done that? Didn't you imply you'd done all kinds of things with people here before?
Well,
I swear to God, if it turns out you're one of those people who seem so eager to get into someone's pants, only to confess to being a virgin afterwards.
oh? Would that be a bad thing?
She had better not be serious. Beryl...
Don't worry, I'm not. Well, I might have been one when I died, considering I don't remember much from my life at this point anymore. But this me isn't. Mind if I ask why this seems to be a touchy subject for you?
I'm not a fan of stealing people's first times. That kind of thing should be special, with someone special. Not with someone like me, who usually doesn't think much of that kind of thing. Besides, it's just emotional baggage I don't need. And it reminds me of that idiot. Well, I'm the one who's the idiot, really. But what he did back then was pretty idiotic, even by my standards.
From the way you put it, it seems you actually do care.
No, I'm not the kind of person anyone should experience their first time with.
So if I tell you I've done that before, then it's fine. And if I tell you that was my first time, then you're going to complain because somehow you don't think you're worthy.
Just where are you going with this?
What if it's both?
Is this another of your weird puzzles? Because I don't think I can muster enough coherent thought to make sense of one right now.
Wouldn't it be fun if it was?
I'm out.
Fine, fine. If you must know, I've gone down on people before. So like I said, this wasn't my first time. But things have never gotten quite so enthusiastic, or, well, deep. So it was a first time too. Because it was the first time that this was something that I wanted to do, rather than something I got asked to do.
Asked? What do you mean by...
Chris, listen. I know you're not some sort of perfect knight in shining armor all the time. Or most of the time. Maybe not even any of the time at all.
Yeah, rub it in. At least you noticed.
But that's not what's important. Because right here, right now, just for me, you were exactly the person I needed. And don't you dare even think about telling me I'm wrong, that the moment was any less special for me because it was you. That's something for me to decide.
I really do have to question your taste in men, Beryl.
Oh, trust me, my track record's not been great. You really have nothing to be jealous of.
You have a thing for bad boys.
Well, good boys rarely end up here, would you believe?
Who would have thought? Do you trust me?
What sort of question is that?
A simple one. Here and now, do you trust me?
I guess?
You guess. What's happened to the smart-ass Beryl who's always so sure of herself?
She's feeling a little off balance at being asked a question like that, I think. And after what we just shared, too. But yes, I do trust you. Being close like this is nice.
Good. Since I have an idea or two, and they'll need trust.
Where are you going?
You mean where are we going?
Do I finally find out what the bandages were for? I've been so curious about this.
I'm guessing you placed these bandage rolls here hoping they'd trigger my memory. I don't think you expected those to possibly get another use.
What?
Use your imagination. I'm obviously not about to tie them around an injury.
Oh, you thought you might tie me up?
Someone is thinking far too much about what she might have watched other people doing, isn't she?
Maybe.
That's not what I plan to use this for.
Oh?
Sit down on the rug.
We have a comfy sofa in the other room and you suddenly want to do things here?
And now your imagination is getting ahead of itself. I think you've been doing far too much watching.
Oh.
Chris holds one end of the cloth to her face, and next thing she knows, the world before her goes dark. Okay, so it's a blindfold. She's vaguely aware of him tying the strip behind her head, then hears the sound of scissors cutting fabric somewhere close to her ear before it's all adjusted properly in place with a gentle tug here and there.
Oh. You wanted to blindfold me?
100 points for observation.
Chris's voice appears near her ear, and it's both warm and amused.
How does that feel?
It's...
Her response is cut off as a shiver goes down her spine. Something just made contact with her ear, running along the edge. She can't help but notice how her heartbeat picks up at the unexpected sensation.
Did you just...
A finger. It must be a finger, right? Is pressed to her lips this time, quietening her.
I'm not going to narrate every action. And since you can't see, you're going to have to concentrate on what you can hear, and on what you can feel.
Something strokes from the inside of her wrist up to her elbow. That must be fingertips. The sensation is light enough to almost tickle, but unexpected enough that her breath catches in her throat.
Stand.
Beryl can't help but feel excited by hearing the sudden demand. She knows that tone, even though she shouldn't, and she's eager to discover what kind of promise lies beyond. Chris is holding her hand, supporting, guiding her as she stands up. Then he lets go, and for a moment she's alone before feeling that hand rest on the opposite side of her waist, gently pulling her to lean against him. There's something comforting and warm about being able to lean against him like this.
Come with me.
The plan is evidently not for them to stay there for long, though. She lets him guide her as she walks blind, a little unsteady on her feet.
Where are we?
Shh. You'll see.
Chris laughs softly. Smug bastard. There's the sound of a door opening. Beryl puzzles for a moment, trying to work out which door it was. They must be heading back to the first room. He must have realized she was right about the sofa there being more comfortable. No, wait. The sofa's not in that direction. This is towards the... They stop and warm hands on her shoulders guide her to turn around.
Now be careful. And sit.
And so Beryl does, trusting him to have guided her somewhere safe. Judging from the creak as she lets her weight settle down, and the softness of what's underneath her, she concludes he's brought her to the leather chair at the teacher's desk. She can only wonder why. His hand, it's definitely his hand, she recognizes its feel by now, brushes her cheek, then down her neck and to her shoulder. The caress continues down her arm before his hand encircles her wrist. There's a moment to contemplate how much bigger and stronger his hand feels before he lifts her arm up above her head. Suddenly, there's something cold, smooth, and hard resting against the inside of her arm before it's dragged up towards her wrist. Are we finally using the handcuffs? Oh my goodness. I was like, why are we carrying these around for so long? They had a use. That sound, like a clink of metal on metal. And then the harsh clicking sound of a ratchet as she feels what can only be a handcuff lock around her wrist.
Ah.
Her heart beats faster still.
I knew you'd kept the handcuffs that you woke up in, but... is this some kind of payback?
Well, that's the beauty of this place, isn't it? We use the objects in here to find... solutions. And I'm simply making use of what you gave me to work with.
Beryl feels her other wrist being grabbed and for a moment considers resisting. But she knows he could overpower her. She also knows that she said she trusts him. And she knows that she's curious about what kind of a plan Chris might have for her. Her hands are pulled behind the chair's back and she feels the handcuffs click around her free wrist too. It's not an entirely uncomfortable position. The sides of the chair are well padded where they're pressing against her arms, and she does have a little freedom of movement. Hearing footsteps, she can tell Chris walks around to the front of the chair, and then... there's silence. Well, other than her own breathing, which is a little ragged. Why is she even breathing like this?
Chris? What are you doing?
Me? Right now I'm admiring how you look. The way the fabric of your dress is stretched over your breasts, with how your back is arched a bit and pushing them forward thanks to your hands being... out of the way.
Beryl is quite sure she can feel the color going to her cheeks. She's also positive Chris can feel the warmth as his hand settles against her face, cupping her cheek. The hand trails down, past her jaw, down her neck, past her collarbone, tracing a fingertip down the edge of her dress as it plunges down her chest. The fingertip suddenly leaves her skin, and she can hear Chris move to her side.
Now, here's an interesting question. At what point does a touch cross over from teasing to... naughty?
His voice is just by her right ear. He must have moved just behind her so he can look down. She feels him walk fingertips from her shoulder to her neck.
I mean, this is playful and innocent, right?
The fingers trace across her collarbone.
This probably a little less so.
Dozens of tiny light touches pitter-patter down the center of her chest.
Is it here, maybe?
His fingertip draws a lazy zigzag across the inner curve of her left breast.
I think that's
In that moment, Chris has taken a distinct liberty, pushing his hand underneath her dress and cupping her breast.
Nice dress. Easy access. Especially when someone's a naughty minx who isn't wearing a bra.
His thumb finds her nipple, circling, teasing, and Beryl does her best not to outright whimper. She feels him squeezing her sensitive skin between his thumb and the side of his finger for a brief moment before he withdraws his hand. Then there's a fingertip circling her nipple again, dragging across the fabric of her dress.
There's really something fun about thin fabric stretched tight, wouldn't you say?
Enjoying the view, then?
Beryl really wishes that her voice wasn't sounding so ragged already after a few scant touches.
I've seen worse.
The voice by her ear is amused, playful. There's a fleeting sensation, a kiss it must be, just behind her ear before she senses him stand up again. It's a strange realization, having a fair idea of what he was doing even without being able to see him. Just from feeling the slight movement of the chair as he stood up, his breath no longer being near her ear, and his footsteps, which are pacing a short distance away. A quiet pause, and then there's another clinking sound, followed by his footsteps drawing closer again. She's pretty sure he's approaching her from the front. Did he get her handcuffed this time? There's another quiet thud accompanied by that metallic clinking sound again. Then the physical contact is back, a hand flat on each shoulder, then sliding down, sweeping out to the sides before reaching her breasts and down to rest on her hips.
I think I can improve my view a little, though.
She's pulled forward, sliding against the leather of the seat until her butt's perched on the front edge. It's not entirely uncomfortable, but a couple of experimental squirms also confirm that she's got no leverage to sit back up. Fingertips trail down the top of her thigh, pausing to stroke side to side at the top of her stocking, before continuing down her leg, past her knee, and finishing at her ankle. There's a moment's pause before Beryl feels something being pressed against her ankle.
That sound. It's the chain from the ankle cuffs, isn't it?
How very perceptive of you.
You already have my hands restrained. And it's not like I could go anywhere right now anyway, is it?
That's true. So what am I doing?
Beryl takes a moment to mentally picture her situation. Half sitting, half lying in the chair, her arms behind its back, and one leg out straight to where Chris had held her as he attached the cuff. Nothing comes to mind immediately, and she then feels her knee being gently pushed out to the side. He presses on the top of her foot, guiding her to bend her knee back until her leg is behind the chairs, her foot just behind it. Then there's a tug at her ankle. No, at the cuff attached to her ankle. Judging by the sound she can hear, he must have grabbed the other end of the ankle cuffs with his other hand, pulled it back, and then looped it right behind the chair.
Mental image coming together now.
She feels him push her other knee out to the side, and then again feels her foot being guided back underneath the seat. The situation is all too easy to picture now. The restraints leave her with her knees wide apart, leaving her feeling very exposed to Chris, despite still being fully dressed.
Comfortable.
Beryl shifts around a little, testing. The position isn't entirely uncomfortable. At least not physically, because it sure as hell isn't remotely dignified. Even so, grudgingly, she has to hand it to him. Chris had known what he was doing when he picked this chair.
Well, nothing hurts yet.
Good. Let me know if anything does end up being uncomfortable.
She feels his hands rest on her upper thighs, just at the top of her stockings. His fingers play across the bare skin between the fabric and the bottom of her skirt. They eventually slide up, pushing the material along.
I seem to recall someone thought I might like to get a look at her underwear not too long ago. I'll let you into a little secret. Right now... yeah, it's a good view.
His hands move away from her, and she hears some sort of shuffling sound in front of her. He's moving, but not far. What is he... Beryl feels fingertips slip underneath the waistband of her underwear, but Chris makes no move to pull it down. He actually pulls it in the opposite direction. The fabric is pulled taut against her skin, gently and not uncomfortably so, but she's extremely aware of exactly where it's pressing against, and then there's warmth. Which means he's deliberately breathing out right there, and that means his eyes are right down there too, and then the sensation is gone.
Looks like someone's feeling... sensitive.
Did she make some kind of noise? Her breathing alone must be betraying her excitement, she's quite sure.
Chris, please tell me you're not planning to tease me to death.
Well, that might be a bit hard considering.
You know what I mean.
Someone sounds a little rough around the edges. You losing it already?
If you've forgotten, you were the only one who got off before.
Which makes things all the more fun right now.
Fingertips draw little circles on the bare skin of her inner thigh. They're tantalizingly close, and she shifts her hips trying to get closer, but Chris pulls them away with a soft chuckle.
Someone definitely seems very impatient.
You think?
I'll let you think about that for a little.
What?
He has her tied to a chair. He can do anything he likes to her, and yet... what is he up to? Is he walking away?
Chris, where are you?
She hears the door open.
Chris?
Later.
He is so rude. The sound of the door closing echoes throughout the room. And then there's silence. Even while straining her hearing, Beryl is quite sure Chris has actually left the room. What the hell is he playing at? She's tied up and helpless, isn't she? Why wouldn't he take advantage of that? It takes Beryl a few more movements to confirm that she is very definitely tied up. She can move a little, and it's not uncomfortable. He did confirm that early on, after all, but she feels so utterly exposed. Which is silly, really, since she's still completely dressed. But her knees are wide apart, and if he wants to see anything, touch anywhere, do whatever to her, she's completely at his mercy. Indeed, as her memory unhelpfully reminds her, she's seen Chris do things to a tied-up partner before, but she never saw him leave said partner alone like this. Sure, he liked to tease things out and sometimes go slow just to see the reactions he could get, but he'd still been doing things. And right now he isn't doing things, and neither can she. Not with her hands cuffed behind the chair's back like this. She can't even press her thighs together and squirm pleasantly since the bastard has so carefully tied her legs wide apart too. God damn it. How dare he leave her like this? Beryl's cheerful thoughts are interrupted by the sound of the door opening again.
Having fun there.
She can hear the amusement in Chris's voice as he walks closer to her. There are a couple of dull clunk sounds indicating he must have put something on the desk. Something from the other room? She turns her head to face where she's pretty sure he is and tries to keep the tone of her voice light and playful.
Oh, you know, just sitting around thinking about things.
Oh? Any particular sorts of things?
Nothing worth mentioning.
Nothing. Really?
She suddenly feels his fingers rubbing lightly against her underwear, low down, and she hears her own sharp intake of breath at the touch. That feels really nice. What can she do to make him continue like that?
Fine. Maybe it was something.
Do tell.
Why don't we play a little game? Why don't you try guessing?
Brave game to suggest, since it looks to me like someone's feeling rather in need of being touched. And right now, there is only one of us who can really do much touching. I can think of a better game.
The hand that was caressing her is withdrawn.
It's where someone who's in no position to make smart-ass comments starts answering me honestly, and as long as I think I'm hearing the truth, she might get to feel nice sensations.
She kind of walked into that one, didn't she?
I was mostly wondering what you'd gone to the other room for.
Is that a coded way of saying I should get up and go through there again?
No, wait. Alright, I'll admit, I was having some indecent thoughts. Memories.
A fingertip begins lazily stroking the skin on her upper chest.
Interesting. Continue.
Beryl can feel the heat in her cheeks. She knows it's a risky game to admit exactly what she was thinking about, but the bastard does hold all the cards right now. And that fingertips. The sensation does feel good on her skin. Slippery slope, here she comes.
So, you already know that outside of here, I can see people but not be seen. That goes for everywhere people might be.
Chris's fingertips follow down from the neckline of her dress again, wandering little patterns on the skin between her breasts.
What you mean to say is, you're the sort of pervert who gets off on watching other people fuck. No judgment, of course. I'm not going to lie and say that I don't enjoy that sometimes, too.
Beryl bites her lip. Would it be a mistake to admit to having watched him before? Probably. Can't you keep things just vague enough to not make it clear it was him she'd watched? Hopefully. She feels light pressure on her chest. He's placed both hands over her breasts, one thumb moving to and fro a little. It feels more than just pleasant right now.
I was remembering watching a couple before, where one of the guys had his wrists tied to the top of the bed.
She can feel her nipples being teased by Chris's thumbs through the fabric of her dress. Why does that feel so much better when it's someone else doing it?
And the other guy was teasing him, licking him, stroking him, getting him all worked up and then backing off.
Oh, you enjoy watching two men together?
Beryl forces a smile.
What can I say, Chris? I've been stuck like I am for a long time now. I've seen a lot of things. For me, passion is hot. Whether it's guys or girls, and whether they're doing things with guys or girls, or on their own. It doesn't matter, really. I guess I'm a pretty open-minded girl.
Or a pervert?
Beryl can't help but chuckle. Right now, she's not going to try arguing the point.
Maybe.
The hands move away, but then one rests on her upper thigh, on the bare skin between her stocking and her underwear. His fingertips are maddeningly close to where she wants to be touched, and she's quite sure he knows it too. Once he does, it's the lightest of touches, barely grazing the silk, but it's enough to evoke an involuntary whimper from her throat.
And you ended up touching yourself while watching them.
She nods, wordlessly acknowledging that she had indeed done just that. The frustratingly light caresses continue, gradually tracing over more and more of the thin fabric covering her. Everything feels so damn sensitive. While it's an interesting experience in itself, when it's someone else's fingertips and you don't know where they're going next, and when you can't even see what's happening, Beryl is slowly reaching a point where all of this is starting to drive her mad.
I couldn't not get turned on watching that. Hearing that. The way his breath sounded. The way he was straining at the ties and how he got brought close and then just teased for so long until he...
So you enjoyed hearing him whimper and beg, is that it?
There's a sudden nagging voice at the back of her head suggesting that really might not be a good idea to admit to given her own current position, but... She's about to respond, to admit that, yes, that really had helped her get off, when all rational thought is stolen from her. Her panties have been pulled to the side, and Chris is sliding a finger, 2 fingers even, deep into her body. There's little resistance with how wet she is at this point, and she feels like she might be losing her mind for an entirely different reason now. His fingers are bigger and rougher than her own, and the sensations are so intensely good as he strokes her deep inside. It feels so different compared to when she does it herself.
Chris,
And the fingers are gone.
No. That was... I was almost...
A finger is pressed to her lips, shushing her. A wet finger.
Shh. I know.
The finger is gone, and another sensation is pressed against her lips for a brief moment. Did he just... Was that a kiss?
You will. Just not yet.
Beryl squirms fruitlessly in her predicament. God damn him. To have brought her so close and even kiss her. That had been a kiss, right? And then leave her so unfinished and wanting and completely unable to do anything about it. She guesses Chris is looking all smug right now as he watches her struggle. What's that noise? A sort of dull, wet clink? Beryl turns her head towards the source of the sound, realizing that's where the desk is before... Ah! A prickling sensation. Icy cold wetness has just dripped onto the bare skin of her chest.
I thought you might be getting a little too hot and bothered, you see.
Damn the guy. It all makes sense now. He'd gone and gotten ice from the bar back when he left, hadn't he? Beryl shivers as a cold, wet trail makes its way from her wrist all the way towards her armpit. It has to be an ice cube that's tracing along her skin.
That's cold!
No shit, really.
Chris chuckles next to her ear and it sends another shiver down her spine. She feels the top of her dress being pulled to one side, exposing her right breast. And then nothing. Ah, nope, there's another of those infernal cold drips. And another. Is Chris holding the ice cube in his hand above her and just tormenting her with little drips of water as it melts? Drip. Is this because of the tub dripping? I've had to listen to this dripping all game, and now I'm gonna just drip water on you. Ugh. The next moment, the ice cube is on her skin, being swirled around her breast, circling in towards her nipple. The cold really is rather intense. But before things have a chance to get really uncomfortable, there's suddenly warmth. Warmth and suction and something rubbing against her nipple that must be his tongue, which is really rather deliciously pleasant, and of course he stops. Beryl feels her dress being carefully pulled back into place, and then hears a few soft footsteps as Chris moves around behind her and then to her left side. This time her left breast is being exposed.
What's coming now?
You're going to tease my left breast. Nah!
Wrong.
The ice trail actually runs from just beside her knee all the way up the inside of her thigh, almost to... Of course he stops and Beryl fights down the urge to growl. She feels him sucking on her left nipple next, and the moment she arches her back a little, he pulls back. Not that he releases her immediately, though. He keeps up the suction until the distance is too great, clearly having an idea how good that feels for her. Once again, her dress is carefully put back into place. And once again, Chris moves. This time, he's in front of her, and there's a hand on her knee and some scuffling sounds. Is he kneeling between her legs now? Fingertips run up her left thigh across bare skin. She feels them catch the edge of her panties and pull the material away to the side. Not that she hadn't felt exposed enough to him in this position already, but now... Exposed is an understatement. Even something as simple as his warm breath feels intense on her sensitive skin right now.
Now what's coming next?
Chris is being playful, teasing her, which isn't fair. He must know she's not able to focus properly anymore.
It's not me, is it?
Her voice sounds more forlorn than she thought it would, but she likes the laugh he makes in response. She's like, I've given up hope. She'll definitely remember that. As well as the feeling of his warm breath over her bare skin there, or the fingertips now stroking up and down, teasing. Then holding her open? The sensation is as brief as it is intense, sending a jolt through her body. Did he just... Nah! Again. He did it again. He flicked his tongue across her exposed... and a third lick. He's doing it deliberately, Beryl concludes. You think? He's pacing out the intense sensations with a moment's pause between each one.
Chris!
A fourth.
Please!
Oh, should I stop?
He's teasing her again and he's having fun with it, bastard. Beryl feels a fingertip stroking her on either side of where she had been licked. It feels good, but it's not nearly as intense. She definitely needs something more right now, when everything feels so sensitive and is aching to be touched, to be licked, stroked. Anything he damn well wants to do, just more.
Please, Chris.
The plaintiveness in her own voice surprises her. Just those two words betray her arousal and frustration and neediness. One of his hands lets go of her, and a moment later she feels his fingers brush her forehead, then tug at the blindfold, pulling it up. Not so bright. She's briefly blinded by the light she's been denied for what feels like so long. Blinking, Beryl looks down, seeing the tousled mop of red hair between her thighs. Chris looks up to meet her gaze.
No more teasing.
She can feel his fingers. She can see his fingers as he holds her open again.
Yes. Please. I need...
Yeah, you do.
A thought of how obscene his whole view must be crosses her mind briefly, with her legs, with everything spread like that, but that's not where Chris is looking. He's looking her straight in the eyes as he presses his lips against her body, making her feel that heavenly sensation of his tongue again. No teasing this time, though. No frustrating little pauses, no smart-ass comments. Just gentle, steady, relentless licks. Beryl almost melts from how good that feels. It's so very different from her own fingers. And the fact that the movements are less predictable only add to the excitement of it. It's an intimate moment all on its own with what Chris is doing, but combined with the eye contact, it's intense. Everything's intense. Her breaths are ragged, her pulse is racing, the sensation is building, and she both wants it to last forever and she wants it to be over now because she is so ready to come, so ready to have someone else make her come, so...
Chris,
He doesn't stop. There's a barely perceptible nod, a feral glint in his eyes as his tongue pushes her over the edge.
Chris!
She knew it was going to feel good, but it's so much better than she imagined after being teased for so long. The blissful sensation of her orgasm seems to set every nerve ending in her body alight. The focused licks give way to softer ones, then whisper soft kisses, bringing her back down to earth. Or rather, to wherever they are right now. For a few moments, all she can hear is her own ragged breathing.
Good.
It's a cheeky question. Beryl is sure Chris knows it's cheeky. There's no way he can have mistaken what he just did to her.
What do you think?
He was clearly waiting for that, for her to formulate her thoughts and start a coherent sentence. That's the moment he ceases to press two fingers into her again.
Chris, wait! I'm too...
Two? Yes. I think you should come again for me.
Huh? Too much?
She sees him grin wickedly, his fingers sliding in and out of her.
22 might be too much. Just 2, though. You can definitely give me another one. I want to feel you come around my fingers.
Beryl realizes it's not a negotiation, it's a demand. And sometimes, it's just easier to give in to demands than to argue, isn't it? And so she surrenders herself up to the moment, to the sensations, to Chris's lead, and simply feels. Closing her eyes and arching her back, she focuses on how his fingers stretch her there, how they're stroking, rubbing, pressing up. Eventually, just letting that second orgasm hit and wash over her, letting her body contract around his fingers just like he wanted. Beryl tries to catch her breath as one of Chris's hands reaches behind the chair. There's an audible click as one of the cuffs releases. His other hand goes behind her back, lifting her, with more strength than she'd expected, into an upright sitting position, basically pulling her into a close hug. She feels a hand cradling the back of her head as she wraps her own arms around him. It feels good. Not the intense sort of good from a few moments ago, but it's warm, comforting, close. It's the sort of good that she needed right now, even though her pleasantly incoherent thoughts wouldn't have known it. Beryl's surprised to get a brief kiss to the side of her mouth.
You good?
Chris's tone is different compared to before. He's not teasing. He's being caring, and it's not fair. He's not supposed to make her feel like this. It's going to make saying goodbye hurt so much more than it should. A goodbye that she knows will have to come eventually. She buries her face against his neck, blinking away any tears before they can try to intrude. Not now. Not with him.
Good.
Her mouth feels dry. Beryl swallows, licks her lip, and has an amused realization.
Your kiss tastes like me.
She feels his laugh more than hears it.
Yeah, that'll happen. I'm gonna break the hug, okay? Need to finish untying you.
She nods, letting him unlock the remaining handcuff. Chris holds her hands for a moment, studying her wrists.
Those marks. That's the pain with handcuffs. They're really not good for comfort. In normal circumstances, I'd never use them. At least not for a moment like that.
Now that he's drawn her attention to it, she's definitely aware of how the cuffs ended up chafing her forearms, even despite her wrist guards. It was probably made worse by some of the squirming she did. But that was entirely Chris's fault anyway, wasn't it?
I don't have my toy box with me here, and there was just something alluring in using your own puzzle pieces for this.
His thumbs are rubbing gently at the marks. Does that make them hurt less? Perhaps. It's a nice distraction at the very least.
See, this style is much better.
Chris crouches down low, unlocking the restraints around her ankles.
Here.
Oh, he even thought I had to fetch a towel from the bathroom when he left to get the ice. The moisture from the ice cubes has mostly dried off from her skin by now, but she still appreciates the gesture. She takes the fluffy material that's been being offered to her with a bashful smile. And then an arm is suddenly wrapping around the back of her shoulders. Another sneaks in under her knees next, and she's lifted up. Not that she ever regarded herself as particularly heavy, and he caught her in the bathroom easily enough, but even so. At this point, Beryl is pretty convinced by Chris's strength. It's a surprisingly nice feeling being handled like this. She snuggles against his shoulder as he takes a few steps across the room to the oversized sofa, then carefully places her down. There's more? Oh my god!
Now, lie down, stretch out, and roll onto your front for me, okay?
It's not a request that seems worth arguing with. The sofa is a particularly comfortable one to lie on after all. That's how it was imagined to be.
Let me guess. That's so you can get a good look at my butt?
It earns her a playful swat on the aforementioned body part.
It actually wasn't, though now that you bring it to my attention.
Beryl feels Chris sitting down on the sofa by her legs.
In all seriousness, though, I'm just going to make sure that everything's good.
Chris's hands are warm. Beryl notes once more as he supports one of her feet while rubbing circles on the sole with his thumb. While he might not be a trained masseur, at least as far as she's aware he isn't, it still feels good. He works his way along her foot and progresses up her calf before he switches to the other limb and repeats the process. She shifts position a little, turning her head so she can watch him. Or rather, see him. Right now her view is basically that of his back. All things considered, she could really get used to this. And then it hurts a little in her heart as her memory reminds her that moments like this cannot last. Neither of them can stay here forever, and the two of them cannot leave together either. Beryl closes her eyes. That isn't what she wants to think about. Right now, the here and now is what's important. What she's feeling. Etching a good memory that she won't forget. Of a few hours where it didn't matter who they were or where they came from. Just that they were here and that they cared. She smiles to herself. Cared. That's an interesting way of saying tied her up, isn't it? But then Chris's hands do feel good on her legs, and any aches or cramps that might have made their presence known from her earlier awkward position are forgotten.
Feeling okay there?
Not Not her most eloquent line, admittedly, but it doesn't need to be. Chris turns around, tapping at her left wrist.
Come on, give me your arm now.
She does as she's told, letting Chris continue kneading her muscles. Maybe he trained as a masseur once. She really isn't sure. While she has watched pieces of his life, it's not like she's done it every single moment of the day. Or night. Truth be told, she's not even entirely sure what he does.
Other arm.
Beryl half turns so she can rest her head on the arm he just finished massaging and lifts her other arm up to him. He's mentioned playing guitar, but that couldn't be his actual job. She's pretty sure she'd know otherwise. Maybe he could be a magician. He can certainly work magic with his hands. Whatever it is, it doesn't seem to involve regular hours.
Okay, and now's the bit where I sit over you.
Beryl feels the sofa shift under her as he moves his weight, straddling her with one knee on either side of her hips. He leans forward, resting his hands on her shoulders, and she melts under his touch once more. Oh, this feels good. Come to think of it, she's not entirely sure whether she's ever even had a back massage before. Her memories of her life before she died are hazy at best, and nobody else who's visited this place cared to try doing something like this for her. This is definitely worth focusing on, and enjoying every moment. She'd like to be able to remember this for as long as she can. There's more pressure on her upper back than there was on her limbs. Chris seems to find every ache, every knotted muscle as he slowly begins working his way down. His thumbs rub little circles on either side of her spine all the way down to the small of her back. Beryl isn't actually sure how long he spends doing that or where her thoughts go in the meantime. It just feels nice and relaxing, and she appreciates Chris taking the time to make her feel good like this.
I didn't expect you to be this caring.
Does it feel weird?
No. It feels really nice, actually.
I may be an asshole sometimes, but when it comes to stuff like this, I care how my partner feels. If the person I'm with isn't having a good time, I usually don't have a good time either. And the last thing I want is to be a shitty lover.
Chris shifts away, clearly indicating that he's done.
Thank you.
All part of the service.
Can the service include being close for a while, too?
Chris ruffles her hair, smiling. She notices a weird feeling pulling somewhere in her stomach.
That could be arranged. Scoot over a bit.
Beryl moves a little towards the back of the sofa and Chris stretches out alongside her.
Okay, as big as the sofa is, I'm at risk of falling off the side here. So just let me rearrange you a little.
She feels him tugging at her shoulder, guiding her to lie on her side. And then there's a warm body pressed against her back. An arm drapes over her, pulling her closer. That can totally work, Beryl decides. In fact, how can such a simple thing feel so... It's hard for her to put it into words. She'd already had trust in him before she'd even let him blindfold her, never mind the rest. But in a strange way, this feels almost as intimate as what they'd done before, just on a different level. It's more of an emotional thing rather than just something physical. Beryl decides it's not worth over-worrying about the how or the why. It's just nice and comforting to be held by this man. She rests her hand just below his elbow, lightly holding on to him, too. A silent moment passes before something occurs to her. She shifts a little, trying to confirm her suspicions. Uh-oh.
Is it just me, or is someone getting hard again?
Considering the little session we just had, I think there would be something wrong with me if I wasn't.
Touché.
For a moment there, she hadn't really thought about how much it might have turned him on to play with her the way he did. But then, it had turned her on a lot more than she'd expected when she went down on him. So, if what he'd done to her had left him feeling rather aroused, well, serves him right for teasing her so much, right? Besides, he had his turn earlier, so that made them even. Wait a minute. If that had gotten him all turned on, and he still took all that time to rub her wrists and ankles and legs and back... No, she really shouldn't dwell on this right now. Not when... well... when he's right there behind her. When she can wiggle her butt teasingly against him like this. The idea that he could easily slip between her thighs right now is rather alluring. If only his pants weren't in the way.
Should we do something about that?
To Beryl's surprise, that makes Chris pull away from her. She turns to look at him in slight worry. Did she say something wrong? Then she realizes he clearly just wanted to get into a sitting position. It doesn't take long before she's being pulled, lifted even, right into Chris's lap. As she settles down, she's intensely aware of how close they are. Before she knows, his lips are pressing against hers, firm and demanding. It's both unexpected and yet feels right, as her own mouth parts to return the gesture, letting their tongues meet in a passionate kiss. Beryl closes her eyes, reveling in the sensations. She concentrates on the arm around her back, on his hand tangling in her hair, on the feeling of closeness, warmth, and being wanted. Chris suddenly breaks the kiss, leaving them both short of breath.
Okay, Beryl. I know this can't last. I know we won't be together forever. Even if there was a way for us to continue seeing each other somehow, I wouldn't believe in it. I don't believe in such sappy shit in general. But I don't want either of us to be left with regrets regarding the time we actually had in here. So if you'd like to have a memory like this to hold on to, I'm game.
And you're not just saying that because you're very aroused right now, are you?
Word of advice. Don't ask things like that when you're dripping wet yourself.
Beryl can't help but laugh.
You'd know, wouldn't you?
She's met with a smug smile as Chris brings a hand up to her face, shamelessly slipping a finger between her lips, and she lets him. She's pretty sure she can taste herself again, his point being made. Beryl grins at him as she snakes her arms around his neck. Chris manages to retreat his finger the moment she leans in to kiss him. The next thing she's aware of is a hand on her breast, which only makes her eagerly press forward against him. Her hands reach down, tugging at the hem of his shirt. As she pulls it up and rests her hand directly on his chest, she can feel how his heart's pounding. He wants this. He wants her. She's aware that her own pulse is racing. Chris slides his lips away from the kiss, nuzzling just beneath her ear. The gesture sends shivers down her spine. Beryl reaches down, her fingers fumbling with the buckle of his belt again. She didn't actually notice when he did it back up, though she's had more interesting things to focus on.
Someone's eager.
Someone got teased enough earlier.
Since he's taken liberties with where his hands have gone, it's only fair that she returns the favor, right? Her slender hand slips easily into his jeans, earning a sharp intake of breath as Beryl runs her hand over the bulge in Chris's briefs. In return, Chris's hand drops to between her legs. She can't help but take a sharp breath when his fingertips find her underwear. It's more than a little distracting right now.
No more games, Chris. I want you.
Feelings mutual. Just tell me one thing. And be honest. I won't judge either way.
Yes?
Do you want me to be gentle? Or do you want it rough?
Oh. That's a rather interesting choice to present her with. Beryl muses. Nehru and Zolf, why you gotta kink shame me like this in my own video? Oh my God. Oh, I'm Beryl in this situation, and Nehru and Zolf are Chris. Just want to make that exceedingly clear. Oh my God. Nobody read into this too much. Don't. I'm pointing at you with my finger through the screen. You? No, don't. Don't even think about it. Don't wonder about it. Don't think about it. Just no. This is strictly for science. Beryl won't deny that the intimate moments they shared when Chris was being caring were really nice. But she's curious to take things a step further.
Don't hold yourself back, Chris.
Closing her eyes, she presses closer, tightening the embrace they share.
Make me feel alive.
And clearly that's all Chris needs to hear. There's a shift in their positions, and next thing she knows, a hand firmly presses against her back, bending her at the waist, shoving her down face first into the sofa. Chris's intentions aren't hard to figure out once he circles away and gets on his knees behind her. She feels his hands run up the back of her thighs, cupping her buttocks, squeezing. A thrill goes through her as he pulls her underwear partway down her thighs without so much as a warning. More than just feeling exposed to him, this time she really is. A thumb slides against her folds, pulling her slightly open. And then something way bigger presses against her entrance. Beryl purrs as Chris eases himself into her, concentrating on the delicious sensation of being stretched and filled. She can't deny that this angle is a very good angle for things to rub together just right. Chris's hands land on her waist, and he retreats only to pull her back onto him, thrusting hard into her. Beryl gasps from both surprise and the intensity of it. Another thrust or three, and before she knows it, things are far from slow and gentle. They're deep and intense, and she's finding it hard to gather her thoughts as Chris keeps hitting her in all the right places. It's a little bit overwhelming, but so goddamn good. She's been craving this so badly.
Touch yourself.
The tone in his voice is demanding, enough for her to understand this isn't just a request. But equally, he must understand how intense the sensations are for her right now, mustn't he? He'll understand if she doesn't raise to... Ow! Ah! A yelp is torn from her as he brings her hand down sharply on her butt. She hadn't anticipated that, and it smarts, and it feels good too.
I didn't think...
Now.
A second spank lands on the other side, and she realizes now is not the time to do anything other than comply with his demand. She slides her hand down quickly, her fingers seeking out where their bodies meet, then traces some of her own slick arousal over herself. The combined rubbing and thrusting does very good things to her body, and it doesn't take long for the sensations to overwhelm her. She whimpers as she comes, her back arching, thighs trembling, and Chris grants her a moment's mercy as he slows down and stops.
You're really getting into this, aren't you?
Beryl has only half of a mind to notice how his voice sounds a bit too serious to be teasing. Chris gives her barely a second or two to recover before he starts thrusting into her again. The slapping sounds are so loud. Oh my god. She feels him gripping one of her buttocks, and then another jolt of excitement spikes through her body as he gives her another spank.
I don't remember telling you to stop.
As much as she wants to listen to Chris's demand, though, things are a bit too overwhelming for her to handle at the moment. Her orgasm has yet to properly fade, and having him ramming into her while she's still feeling oversensitive is something that makes both her brain and her body turn into mush.
I'm... too sensitive.
That's the idea. Plus, I like the sounds you make.
Ah!
Yes, those.
Chris clearly has little patience because he reaches between her thighs himself. Beryl can't help but try to grab his wrist once he seeks out her most sensitive spot, doing her best to keep it still. It does little to hinder him, though, really. She's reminded once again of his strength, and she'd be lying if she tried to pretend it wasn't a thrill to feel him take control like this. With the way his fingers rub against her, it seems to send sparks through every nerve in her body, like she's about to go mad.
Wait. Give me a moment, please.
Chris actually seems to listen and slows with the thrusting, but then his hand speeds up, and Beryl honestly isn't sure whether that's better or worse.
Is this kind of rough too rough for you?
She squirms, but he holds her flush against him with no means of escape. His slick fingers mercilessly continue to play with her, and the sensations are maddening.
Chris?
What? It's a little hard to understand what you're saying. Rub faster, was that?
Beryl breathes hard, keeping her eyes shut tight, as she feels a second orgasm kicking in. She can't hold in another broken moan.
Your body doesn't seem to be complaining, at least.
The weight of his body presses against her back as he pulls her to him. His rough, breathy whisper is so close to her ear that she can feel the warmth in his breath. She enjoys that as well.
I mean, that sounds good. Feels really good when you come around me like that, too.
She could easily have guessed that he'd enjoyed feeling that, but there's something about hearing it spelled out so explicitly, which is probably why he said it. It's almost unfair how many little ways he can find to turn her on. But two can play at that game, can't they? And if it's a turn on for her...
I love feeling stretched around you as well.
She feels him twitch inside her. She's also very aware of the strength in his arms that encircle her body. She's quite sure she couldn't free herself even if she wanted to. But being held like this feels so secure and intimate that it's exactly what she wants right now. Just for a minute to let her nerves come back down to some semblance of normality, that's all she needs. Maybe 2 minutes. It's hard to fully relax when he teases her with a few gentle thrusts now and then. While it's a wonderful feeling to be held like this, she doesn't want to just be a passive player in this game.
Chris, do me a favor.
Oh?
I want you on your back.
She hears him chuckle against her ear and the arms around her relax. Beryl takes the opportunity to slip out from underneath him as he moves to sit. And then with a press of hands against his chest, she tackles him down onto the sofa.
Someone's enthusiastic. Is it time for some Beryl revenge?
I don't think I have enough rope for that.
She hears, as well as feels, him laugh beneath her.
But I do want to make you feel good.
Beryl presses a quick kiss to Chris's lips and then slides off him to kneel down, just to one side. It's an easier position from which she can reach down and pull her underwear off. She casts the fabric aside and then swings her leg across his body so that she can kneel astride him. She takes hold of the hem of her dress in both hands and teasingly shimmies it up, revealing more of her thighs, and then all of her to his gaze.
Might be a bit late for a striptease, you know.
Beryl smiles and feels her cheeks color with momentary embarrassment, but Chris clearly has no intent to tease. He reaches down, guiding himself into her once more, and using his legs as leverage, he thrusts up into her. It's another good position for sensation, all the more as she's so sensitive right now, and she can hear his ragged breaths coming in shorter gasps. She finds she has some control now, too. If she sits up more, he has to thrust up more, while if she lowers herself, he has less scope to move. Somewhere in the middle seems like a good balance. Intense for her, intense for him. And from the look in his eyes, he's close. Judging from his breathing when he's almost there, she sits down with her full weight, feeling him deep inside her. Chris can no longer thrust properly when she's like this, denying him the high point he was so close to.
You said something about revenge?
She gives him a grin and he laughs.
You cheeky minx.
His hands grip her waist, lifting her up, and then holding her in place, Chris thrusts into her. Fast and deep. No teasing, no holding back, just raw and intense as he fucks her hard. It's empowering, feeling him lose control like that. Hearing his breaths coming shorter and shorter before that guttural groan, feeling him pulse within her, and his grip on her slacken as his own orgasm overcomes him. Beryl watches him in silent fascination, letting all the sensations and high emotions settle down, before she leans into him, still keeping their bodies connected. She lets her arm snake around Chris's neck as she rests her body against his, eager to snuggle with him a bit after all is said and done. She hears his heart thumping away, and it's strangely comforting. Moments later, she feels one of his arms fall over her shoulders in a loose hug. It seems as though he has no desire to move, and neither does she. She has to admit it to herself, that these were the best sexual experiences she can remember having. But she's not going to tell Chris something like that. As much as she's sure it would flatter his ego to be told that, it would hurt if he didn't say the same in return, and she's sure he wouldn't. He said that like when you guys first started doing all of this. Beryl. It's not like Chris has any actual feelings for her, and she knows it. Assuming otherwise would be wishful thinking on her part. He barely even knows her. Part of her wonders whether she should just keep quiet and enjoy the moments they have now. Another part of her conscience is nagging at her, though, because said moments are based on a false premise. And she thinks maybe Chris deserves more honesty from her, even if it's something that probably won't make him happy. Even if it's a terrible idea in itself and might spoil everything between them. This whole place is false, though, isn't it? What does one more falsehood matter? Beryl lets out a sigh. Huh. She knows it does matter.